Elon Musk reportedly predicted that a recession might occur as early as spring 2022. Almost every investor has predicted some sort of economic recession, but few have given a timetable as short as Elon's current forecast. This video will explain why Elon thinks a recession is coming and what investors may do to prepare. But before we begin, make sure to keep yourself informed and engaged by subscribing to the channel, clicking the notification bell, and turning on all notifications so you won't miss our latest uploads. Elon Musk, and the founder of multiple great businesses, has direct experience with the effects of a financial crisis. In February 1999, he sold Zip2, the company he co-founded with his brother, for more than $300 million, just before the dot-com boom burst. Elon also lived through the 2008 recession as the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, which both went bankrupt practically simultaneously. Elon now believes that we are about to go through a similar predicament in the next few months. A Wall Street Journal tech columnist tweeted, "There are 936 startups valued at more than $1 billion in the world today. What do we think this chart looks like in, say, 5 years?" A graphic of all the unicorns, which are private enterprises valued at over $1 billion, is attached to the tweet. The list of unicorns cover businesses from practically every industry, each with tens or hundreds of employees. This is in sharp contrast to the 150 unicorns that existed in September of this year. That's a 6 times increase in 2 years, which is unsustainable. If history is any guide, not many will make it past the next recession, Elon responded to the tweet. When asked when the next recession will occur, Elon replied, quote, "Predicting macroeconomics is challenging to say the least. My gut feel is maybe around spring or summer 2022, but not later than 2023. There are numerous reasons to anticipate a recession in 2022. First and foremost, I'm sure you're all aware that consumer costs are rapidly rising." In response to a tweet that said 99-cent dreams, Elon said, quote, "Now $1.25. Prices are rising mostly as a result of the government's excessive spending, which effectively allowed the United States to print its way out of the 2020 recession. The amount of tax that the average American worker must pay to keep the federal budget funded is depicted in this graph. In recent years, the amount of tax that each worker must pay has risen dramatically to around $22 per hour. That is obviously a massive sum. Quote, "This chart is a big deal," Elon said in response to the data. The Federal Reserve plans to boost interest rates and scale down quantitative easing, which is when the feds buy bonds in order to reduce the government's budget deficit. In a recent news release, the Fed predicted that interest rates will need to be raised to 0.9% by 2022. While 0.9% may appear insignificant, it represents a significant rise when compared to the average interest rates for the previous decade. The Fed attempt to hike interest rates to 2.4% in 2019, as shown in this graph. The market, on the other hand, responded unfavorably, driving interest rates to drop to 1.5% before the pandemic began. A rate hike to 0.9% will almost surely have a detrimental impact on the market, especially given how reliant financial markets have gotten on 0% interest rates. According to the Fed, quote, "The median for the appropriate level of the federal funds rate is 0.9% at the end of 2022, about a half percentage point higher than projected in September. Participants expect a gradual pace of policy firming, with the level of the federal funds rate generally near estimates of its longer run level by the end of 2024, end quote. The Fed intends to reduce bond purchases in addition to rising interest rates, beginning in mid-January 2021. The Fed will reduce monthly bond purchases by $30 billion. Fed Chair Jerome Powell anticipates that the Fed will stop buying bonds entirely by mid-March. Jerome Powell is cited as saying at a January meeting, quote, "The committee also decided to double the pace of reductions in its asset purchases. Beginning by mid-January, we will reduce the monthly pace of our net asset purchases by $20 billion for Treasury securities and $10 billion for agency mortgage-backed securities. If the economy evolves broadly as expected, similar reductions in the pace of net asset purchases will likely be appropriate each month, implying that increases in our securities holdings would cease by mid-March, a few months sooner than we anticipated in early November." End quote. On the surface, this appears to be a good thing because inflation will certainly decrease. However, this will have a negative impact on the economy. The economy has recovered well from the pandemic, but it was reliant on government spending, which is set to come to an end. Elon Musk forecast a recession as early as spring 2022, which is around when the Federal Reserve will stop buying bonds. What I just said may sound bad enough, but Elon could be hinting at a financial crisis that is worse than a recession. A recession is defined as 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, which is relatively common. As a result, even if the GDP drops by 0.5% for several quarters, it is still deemed a recession. A depression, on the other hand, occurs when the GDP falls by more than 10% in a year. The Great Depression is the most well-known example of this. The GDP of the United States fell by 30% during the Great Depression. Economic prosperity preceded the Great Depression, as it did every other financial crisis. Dubbed the Roaring Twenties, the 1920s saw one of the greatest periods of speculation, which, of course, set the stage for the Great Depression. Tim Urban, a writer, asked, quote, "We're 20% of the way through the 2020s. Can we start the roaring part soon?" Unquote. Elon responded with a 100 and a praying emoji. He then further elaborated by tweeting, quote, "Let's make the roaring 20s happen." This tweet implies that Elon believes we aren't far from the roaring 20s with the current level of speculation. One Twitter user proposed a website that pays people to take pictures of stupid NFTs. The website essentially mocks NFTs by demonstrating how you can simply photograph them rather than owning them in a blockchain. In reaction to the tweet, Elon laughed. We may already be in the roaring 20s, albeit in the 21st century rather than the 20th. Growing store inventories are another cause that could trigger a recession. Elon Musk admires Cathie Wood, a fund manager who has predicted an economic slowdown due to oversupplied inventories. As supply networks fail to satisfy customer demand, retail inventories have fallen dramatically from pre-pandemic highs. Businesses have responded by ordering enormous volumes of goods to meet future consumer demand. Such orders, Cathie argues, have been overdone, resulting in large amounts of sitting inventory. Recent evidence suggests that her forecast could come true in the coming months. Cathie wrote on Twitter, quote, "Today we learned that, in November, retail inventories rose more than 2%, the fastest pace since the 90s, while imports jumped 4.7% and exports dropped 2%. Moreover, real consumption, including services, was flat and the saving rate dropped to 6.9%, below pre-COVID levels." Cathie's gains are monthly, so if they continued for a year, inventory would rise by 24% annually. The inventory increases have been so significant that inventory growth accounted for all of America's third quarter GDP growth. As inventories rise in the next months, the economy will certainly decelerate, raising the possibility of a recession over the next 3 to 6 months. That time frame corresponds to Elon's forecast of a recession. There are various strategies for investors to protect their portfolios from a recession. The world's largest hedge fund manager, Ray Dalio, believes that buying Chinese stocks will generate massive profits while reducing risk in investing portfolios. Many people, however, believe Dalio's projection is suspect. The creator of Social Capital, Chamath Palihapitiya, has become market neutral by buying Microsoft and Google while selling Meta, Netflix, Apple, and Amazon. Finally, Cathie Wood is betting against a stock market crash by shorting conventional corporations like GM. That's all there is to it. According to Elon Musk, a recession could occur as early as 2022 and as late as 2023. Let me know if you agree with Elon Musk and if you want me to go into further detail on how investors may protect themselves from a potential recession. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. See you guys in the next one, and remember, keep living life bullish.